All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our water fluoridation investigation. So, I have some exciting news for all of you. Henrico County did, in fact, respond to our declaratory judgment request for a permanent injunction to stop water fluoridation in the county of Henrico and writ of mandamus in order to compel Henrico to provide pure water as defined under Virginia law. They did respond on the 4th. They responded with something called a demurrer, which is what I thought that they would do. But before we get into what Henrico had to say, I want to recognize Alabaster, Alabama. They decided to stop water fluoridation. So great job, Alabaster, Alabama. The reason why they chose to discontinue water fluoridation was for safety reasons. Yes, that was one of the many reasons why they decided to stop putting this FDA defined chemical drug into the drinking water. Just like Henrico County, Alabaster, Alabama was putting hydrofluorosilicic acid into the drinking water. And this is a big problem. As we know, every week another locality is jumping off this fluoride bandwagon. So, where we stand now in the United States of America, I would say we're probably around 50% of the US is still fluoridating their water. But like I said, every week another locality is jumping off this fluoride bandwagon. So, with that being said, I'm going to cover Henrico County's response briefly. I'm not going to go into extreme detail with this, primarily because I haven't had the time to really dive into the various citations that they have. But I can say I've looked over a few things so far, and I find it to be very interesting. So let's get started, shall we? Okay, guys, before we get into this document, I want to let you know that I have gone ahead and uploaded the last video that I did for you guys. I realized after I uploaded it that the top portion of the text was cut off, so I apologize for that, and I've gone ahead and uploaded that again where you can see everything in its entirety. Second, let's go over really quickly what a demurrer is and is not. So, a demurrer, as I understand it, a demurrer admits as true all material facts properly pleaded in the complaint, as well as all reasonable inferences arising therefrom. A demurrer tests only the legal sufficiency of the complaint and does not resolve factual disputes, weigh evidence, or decide the merits of the case. The sole question is whether the complaint states causes of action upon which relief may be granted. So, again, a demurrer admits as true all material facts properly pleaded in the complaint. So the demurrer admits as true that this is child abuse. The demurrer admits as true that this is unlawful spending. The demurrer admits as true that this causes that ingesting hydrofluorosilicic acid causes disfigurement. A demurrer admits as true that ingesting fluoride reduces your IQ. What the county of Henrico is trying to do is say essentially, so what? Who cares if this is true? We don't think that she should be able to continue for these reasons that they laid out. So let's go ahead and jump into the reasons as to why the county of Henrico thinks that they should still have the authority to put a poison into the drinking water, to dilute a poison in our water. So let's jump into that, shall we? All right, here we go, guys. Demur of defendant Henrico County. Defendant Henrico County, Virginia, by counsel hereby demurs to plaintiff's complaint on the following grounds. 1. Plaintiff filed the instant matter in the hope of forcing Henrico County to cease adding fluoride to the public drinking water. That is correct. Plaintiff asserts that she is a resident of Henrico County, voluntarily consumes the public drinking water provided by Henrico County, pays for such public water use, and generally pays other taxes to the county. Number 2, plaintiff asserts that the consumption of fluoride causes various ailments, including dental fluorosis, and lowers IQ quotient test scores. Plaintiff does not allege that she has suffered any injury as a result of consuming Henrico County's public water. That this statement right here is not correct. 3. Plaintiff asserts the following causes of action. Henrico County lacks statutory authority to introduce fluoride into the drinking water and thus in violation of Dillon's rule. That is correct. I am stating that they do not have the statutory authority and it is in violation of Dillon's rule. B. Creation of public nuisance in violation of Virginia Code 15.2-900. That is one of the things I pointed out. I also pointed out that this is child abuse. I also pointed out that under the Code of Virginia, this would likely fall into attempts to poison. I also pointed out that this is unlawful spending. I also pointed out that this is arbitrary and capricious. There was a lot of things that I pointed out. So they decided to just choose a few of them. C. Violation of plaintiff's procedural and substantive due process rights. That is one of the things I pointed out. D. Gross negligence. Okay. So they decided not to challenge everything that I alleged. They just chose to challenge a few things, which is fantastic. Following the order presented in the preceding paragraph, all causes of action asserted by plaintiff fail for the following reasons. So they're not challenging that this is unlawful spending. They're not challenging that this is arbitrary and capricious. They're not challenging ultra vires. They're not challenging that this damages your thyroid, your brain, your teeth, your bones. They're not challenging any of that. And as I understand it, the demur essentially says we're stating all of that is a fact. Henrico County just says, so what? We're going to try to get you on sort of a technicality, if you will. That's the best way that I can explain it at this point to you guys. So let's see what they say. So following the order presented in the preceding paragraphs, all causes of action asserted by plaintiff fail for the following reasons. So let's see why these particular things fail. Nothing else fails, but this fails. Let's see. Henrico County has express statutory authority to operate its community waterworks pursuant to Virginia Code 15.2-2102. To all of my friends in other states, you will notice that the county said they have statutory authority to operate the waterworks. Do they have statutory authority to use the waterworks as a mechanism to mass medicate the public? That is the controversy. I am not alleging that the county does not have the authority to operate a waterworks. They can operate a waterworks. You just can't use the waterworks to put drugs in the water. You can't put Viagra in the water. You can't put cholesterol medicine in the water. You can't put blood pressure medicine in the drinking water. You can't even put vitamin C into the water. And you cannot put hydrofluorosilicic acid into the water. All right, but let's go on. The State Board of Health, the board, empowered to regulate community waterworks pursuant to Virginia Code 32.1-169. Yes, the State Board of Health is empowered to regulate waterworks. That is correct. The board shall have general supervision and control over water supplies and waterworks in the Commonwealth. Now, the General Assembly made it clear as to how they wanted VDH to regulate the waterworks, okay? And the Virginia General Assembly never granted Virginia Department of Health the authority to regulate fluoride in the drinking water, okay? Let's see. And Virginia Code 32.1-112 the board may make, adopt, promulgate, and enforce such regulations. Now, again, VDH can make regulations, but they're limited as to what regulations they can make. So if y'all recall, we had that proposed 1952 bill where it would have authorized localities to put fluoride in the drinking water. The bill would have done two things. It would have authorized the localities to put the drug in the water, and then it would have authorized Virginia Department of Health to make regulations therewith. The General Assembly did not grant the authority for localities to put this in the drinking water. The General Assembly did not grant VDH the authorities to make regulations therewith because it didn't pass, okay? Now, instead, what the General Assembly did is they stated that Virginia Department of Health has the authority to enforce pure water. Okay, pure water means you remove contaminations from the drinking water to make it safe to drink. Okay, nowhere in these pure water laws does it state that VDH can recommend water fluoridation, require water fluoridation, make regulations regarding water fluoridation. Virginia Department of Health is essentially trying to make laws that is required by the Virginia General Assembly, in my opinion. That is the controversy, right? That is the controversy. So I found it quite funny, I suppose, that Henrico County chose to point out that VDH, or that the Virginia General Assembly, can promulgate regulations, but they left out 32.1-170 that expressly states that VDH is required to promulgate regulations to support pure water, to promote pure water. The General Assembly never granted VDH the authority to make regulations in connection with hydrofluorosilicic acid, sodium fluoride, or any other type of fluoride compound. All right, so let's move on. The board recommends that all community waterworks deliver the optimal fluoride ion concentration as determined by the United States Department of Health and Human Services. All right. Those of you who've been watching this video knows that the United States Department of Health and Human Services does not recommend water fluoridation. I have searched high and low. I have done Freedom of Information Act requests. The United States Department of Health and Human Services does not recommend water fluoridation. They do not say that there is an optimal level of fluoride. In fact, what I have found is that Secretary Kennedy, the HHS secretary, has repeatedly said that this is a poison that's being put into the drinking water that this is a toxin being put into the drinking water, that this is a recycled waste byproduct from the phosphate industry and the aluminum industry that is being put into the drinking water. So I have done a Freedom of Information Act request to Henrico County asking them to provide me the record that they relied upon to make this claim. I've asked a Virginia Department of Health for the record relied upon to claim that HHS recommends water fluoridation. They could not produce a single record that says that HHS actually recommends water fluoridation. Okay, so just like the EPA does not recommend water fluoridation, EPA put out a notice in either January or February of this year, and they were adamant that the EPA does not recommend water fluoridation. Likewise, the Department of Health and Human Services, they don't recommend it. You can't prove to me that. I mean, I'd love to see this document that Henrico's relying upon to assert that HHS actually recommends water fluoridation. And technically, the way I see it is because HHS does not recommend water fluoridation, that they certainly don't recommend it. Secretary Kennedy is adamant that this should be taken out the drinking water. Technically, when it says the board recommends all community waterworks in Virginia be optimally fluoridated, because HHS doesn't have set an optimal fluoride ion concentration, it's 0 at this point, then technically the Virginia Department of Health board is stating that the optimal fluoride ion concentration is 0. In my opinion, that's the way I see it. So we'll see what they have to say about that. All right, let's move on. The United States Department of Health and Human Services current recommendation for fluoride in drinking water for the prevention of dental decay is 0.7 milligrams per liter. So I've done a FOIA request asking for them, put your money where your mouth is. Show me the document that Health and Human Services has a current recommendation of 0.7 milligrams per liter. Yeah, that one's going to be a little bit difficult for the county to produce. Okay, current meaning today, folks. So what do you think? For all of those who have been following this, you should know by now that Health and Human Services does not set a current recommendation of 0.7 milligrams per liter. All right, the United States Department of Health and Human Services Federal Panel on Community Water Fluoridation, United States Health Service recommendation for fluoride concentration in drinking water for the prevention of dental caries, 2015. Now, they're not stating that this is the citation for this, okay? But for those of you who are just joining, Health and Human Services put out the notice that the Public Health Service's recommendation. So, in other words, Health and Human Services said, okay, folks, this is what the Public Health Service recommends. HHS isn't recommending this. The Public Health Service did, and the Public Health Service recommended water fluoridation back in 2015 based on what they claim was the best available science. As it stands now, we have so much more information that proves that this is harmful to the public. So it is reckless to follow a 2015 recommendation, especially being that you don't even have the statutory authority to do so. Okay, so let's move on. B. Virginia Code 15.2-900 does not create a private right of action. Instead, Virginia Code 15.2-900 grants any locality the authority to maintain a cause of action against a party responsible for a public nuisance as the term is defined in the statute. Any locality may maintain an action to compel a responsible party to abate, raise, or remove a nuisance. Okay, so I pointed out that under 15.2-900, I'm arguing that adding hydrofluorosilicic acid to the public drinking water is a public nuisance. And in that law, it says that the locality may maintain an action to compel the responsible party to abate the hazard, okay, or the public nuisance. And I suppose that Henrico didn't quite understand what it was that I was articulating, but in essence, Henrico County says, okay, so what if we are intentionally being a public nuisance? So what if this is a hazard, right? We have the discretion to police ourselves or not police ourselves. So picture this, guys. Henrico County is intentionally putting a hydrofluorosilicic acid into the drinking water. This is a nuisance. And Henrico County is saying, yeah, who cares if it's a nuisance? We decide that we're going to be derelict in our duties and not stop the nuisance from occurring. Now, they won't identify who is responsible for this nuisance. So is it the waterworks operators? And so the county as a whole is being derelict in their duty by not forcing the waterworks operators to stop? Is the DPU director intentionally ordering this to be put into the drinking water, and Henrico County is being derelict in their duties by not stopping this public nuisance? Is it the county manager who's deciding this, in which case the county is being derelict in their duties by not stopping this? And so essentially what Henrico County is saying is, yeah, who cares if it's a public nuisance? Who cares if it causes disfigurement? Who cares if it reduces IQ? So what, right? So what? So what is essentially what they're saying. We have the authority to decide whether or not we're going to put the kibosh to the nuisance that they are creating. So Henrico County, they themselves can be the guilty party of the nuisance, and because it's up to them to have the discretion as to whether or not they're going to put the kibosh to the nuisance, then like they're just not going to stop. Okay, they're not going to police themselves. Okay. So the point that I was trying to make to the judge is that, one, it falls under the definition of a public nuisance, and two, to point out that Henrico County is being derelict in their duties by not putting an end to this, okay? Especially given that it's arbitrary and capricious. So I will have to essentially write up a response to, well, I don't know how I'm gonna write this up. Actually, I'm thinking of a few things, but that's essentially what they're saying. So what? We're the county, and if we don't want to stop this nuisance, we don't have to stop this nuisance. But again, I was trying to articulate to the judge that under the definition, this water fluoridation falls under the definition of a public nuisance, is what I was driving at. All right, there is no fundamental right to water. Okay, now this was where I just started laughing. Okay, the county is saying that even though my tax money is going to the waterworks, to maintain the waterworks, to put in new equipment in the waterworks, even though I pay taxes for the waterworks and I pay for the water that comes to my house, I don't have a fundamental right to water service. So I don't have a right to the water that I pay for. I don't have a right to decide I don't have the right to say that the county doesn't have the authority to stop putting the hydrofluorosilicic acid into the water. I don't have a right to say that the county cannot use the waterworks as a mechanism to mass medicate. I have no fundamental right to water service. I would say the county is mistaken. And their response here, their citation rather, is City of Detroit, and then they're quoting Golden v. City of Columbus. And I've looked up both of these citations, and in both of these cases, the person or persons was not paying for water. They thought they were entitled to have free water. In one of the cases, the one case, it's a little bit convoluted, but let me give you an analogy to help illustrate it. Imagine that somebody moved into my house, okay? Let's say I'm the customer of the water and I just stopped paying my water. And then, I don't know, Joe Schmo comes and moves into my house. Joe Schmo says he has a right to free water. And essentially the city, I believe it was a city, in both cases it was a city, the city said, yeah, you don't have a right to free water. And the woman, she argued that she has a constitutional right to free water. And the court said, no, you don't have a constitutional right to free water. I am not claiming that I have a constitutional right to free water. I pay for the water and my taxes go towards the waterworks. Okay. So I found that to be rather interesting that they say I have no fundamental right to water service. And these were the cases that they cited. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right, let's move on. The state and federal courts have held unanimously that the introduction of fluoride into public drinking water service does not violate constitutionally protected liberty interest. Now, there's a couple things going on here. Here's their citation. Okay. Let's talk about the constitutional protected interest. Henrico is correct that in the past, people have challenged the constitutionality of compelling the public to ingest a chemical drug. And in the past, the citizens have failed. Okay, the courts ruled that it's not a violation of your constitutional rights. Now, I disagree with those courts on a variety of reasons, but nonetheless, that is what they said. The legal landscape has changed. A federal judge says this poses an unreasonable risk of injury. The FDA has banned this for children under the age of 3. The National Toxicology Program has said that this is that ingesting fluoride is causes it's a neurocognitive, what's the exact framing? Essentially that it causes brain damage. I can't think of the exact framing right now. Cognitive neurodevelopmental hazard to humans. That's what the National Toxicology Program has said. There's a litany of information. Now, I want to point out that in Virginia, they said forced sterilization was constitutionally protected. Okay. So just because courts have ruled in the past that you can compel an individual to ingest a chemical drug, doesn't mean that the legal landscape can't change, right? We no longer do forced sterilization. Okay, that's not a thing. We don't do that anymore. And I'm arguing that the legal landscape has changed. Okay. Now, the case that they cite is Pure Water. I think that was Community of I don't know. I don't know what that is. I think Maryland v. Mayor of City Council of Cumberland. Okay. That case, I found it astounding that Henrico used this. That case, the city voted twice not to have fluoride in the drinking water. Okay. And they put it in their charter not to have fluoride in the drinking water. And then they essentially, through a series of unfortunate events, got out those city council members and installed people who will vote to put fluoride in the drinking water. Now, Henrico County has never voted to put fluoride in the drinking water. Okay. In that other case, I don't know what the state law said, but the locality, there was a vote. There was due process. Okay. The city voted multiple times not to have the fluoride in the drinking water, and then they voted to put it in the drinking water. Okay. Henrico has never voted. So this is a terrible example. And what I'm saying is that you can't put this in the drinking water without so much as a vote. You'd have to have the legislature that voted on it. You would have to have the Henrico County, the Board of Supervisors vote on it. You would have to have constitutional backing. I would argue you need ethics, common sense. I would argue that this is still, even if you had a state law or an ordinance, I would argue that this is unlawful. Why? Because Henrico County does not have any documents to support the purpose, the justification, or the safety, making this arbitrary and capricious. Okay, folks? So this was astounding that they used this pure water thing. Absolutely astounding. Okay, lacking any substantive due process violation, plaintiff's procedural due process claim also fails. I don't even know what they're trying to get at here. There was no due process. There was no state law, so there's no due process. There's no ordinance, there's no due process. And when they put it back into the drinking water, they did not notify the public. There was no due process. They did this without the public knowing at all. There was no public participation in this at all. Okay. And they said, see, Scott v. They did not spell Greenville correctly. I'm not sure why. I don't know if maybe they used ChatGPT or something. But this is Scott v. Greenville City. And as far as I can tell, if I'm pulling up the right case, that case was about, there was a black man who was trying to get a permit, and the city wouldn't give him a permit. Essentially, he was claiming they wouldn't give him a permit because he was black. And I looked at this late at night a few days ago, and if my memory serves me right, I think that the court said, yeah, you have to give black people permits. So the court said that the city was not behaving properly. So I'm not sure why Henrico County would have used this. One, it doesn't apply. I don't know what they're getting at with this. And two, yeah, black people can have permits. So are you saying that you disagree with the judge? and you don't think black people should have permits, just like you think I don't have a right to the water that I pay for? Like, is that what y'all are saying? I don't know, guys. I'm going to have to dive deep into it. Like I said, this is just a cursory understanding of what's going on. So I might have to make another video to clarify some of these things. But as it stands now, this is what I believe is happening. All right, D. The county enjoys sovereign immunity for claims of gross negligence. Seabolt v. County of Albemarle. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Albemarle. I'm not sure. I'm not even going to try and butcher this. But this has to do with a park, okay? I can say that much. I did look at it briefly. Henrico County doesn't have sovereign immunity when it comes to waterworks. Waterworks is very unique. The county of Henrico can have sovereign immunity when it comes to a lot of things. If they did something stupid at a park, they have sovereign immunity. If the police accidentally make a mistake and somebody's rights are violated or somebody gets harmed, they have sovereign immunity. If the waterworks operators, let's say with the waterworks, you don't have sovereign immunity because the courts have ruled that this is proprietary. Now, this is proprietary in another way. So here's how it works, from my understanding. If there was a state law that forced Henrico to put it into the drinking water, then you have sovereign immunity because the county did not have any choice. This fluoride going into the drinking water, they're doing this just because they feel like it, okay? Which makes their actions proprietary. They are not protected by the state law. If it's a government compelled action, then yeah, you have sovereign immunity. If it's not a government compelled action, you don't have sovereign immunity when it comes to water, okay? Water is very different. So I don't know why they would have chosen I guess they chose a park because they couldn't find anything when it comes to water. We know in the Flint, Michigan crisis that people were sued, people were jailed, people got in a lot of trouble. They were not protected by sovereign immunity. Okay, anyone who understands Flint, Michigan knows that a locality is not protected by sovereign immunity when it comes to water. It just doesn't work that way. Okay, let's move on. Even if plaintiffs' gross negligence claim were not barred by sovereign immunity, so they're doubting that, the allegations of negligence seem to be directed at City of Richmond personnel over which the county exercised no control and shares no agency relationship. Now, this is not exact. There's a little bit of nuance to this, and here's why. Henrico County signed a contract with the City of Richmond. I don't remember how long it was, something like 30 or 40 years or 60 years or something. I don't remember. Many years, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, somewhere in that land. And because I remember, because Mr. Tyrone Nelson had a big problem with this, and he pointed out the contract. Henrico County, because they signed a contract with the City of Richmond, Henrico County is responsible, okay? And here's why. One, Henrico County cannot sign a contract with the City of Richmond so the City of Richmond drugs the public of Eastern Henrico, Okay, you don't have the authority to do that, for one. Two, upon information and belief, speaking with the waterworks operators, the waterworks operators can stop feeding fluoride to Eastern Henrico. There's 4 different feeds. Okay, there's a feed that goes to Richmond, there's a feed that goes to Hanover, there's a feed that goes to Henrico, and there's a feed that goes to Chesterfield. So, upon information and belief, they can shut off the feed that goes to Henrico. Okay, and Henrico's saying, well, we signed a contract so the city of Richmond can drug you as much as they feel like it. And, we share no agency relationship. We exercise no control over this. Well, you did have control. You had control over the contract. You had control over what you were going to agree. You have control now, okay? So that's a bit ridiculous in my opinion. And I warned them for many, many, many months before this fluoride overfeed occurred. I said that this is bad. I said that accidents happen. I said that these pumps are vulnerable to cyber attacks. The systems are subject to breaking down and malfunctioning. You have human error where they accidentally put in the wrong number, where they misplace a decimal point, which is what happened in New York recently. So to say that you are not responsible is not, I disagree with that. I'll put it that way. Okay. Especially after the fluoride overfeed occurred. More than a month's worth of fluoride goes into the drinking water in 5 hours and 15 minutes. I think Henrico County has the ability to say, folks, we would like for you to stop feeding fluoride to Eastern Henrico because you guys have no idea what you're doing. And by the way, the public never gave us the green light to drug them. Okay. So that's what that is. Let's move on. I find that to be appalling, if you can't tell. 5, plaintiff requests the following forms of relief. A declaration that Henrico County's fluoridation of public water is not authorized under Dillon's Rule and related state law. A declaration that, yes, I'm asking plaintiff, which is me, I am requesting that the courts declare that Henrico County's fluoridation of public drinking water is not authorized under Dillon's Rule and related state law. That is what I'm asking. Okay. I'm saying to the court, there's no state law that authorizes Henrico to do this. So therefore, I want you to put a kibosh. Temporary injunction requiring Henrico County to cease adding fluoride to its drinking water. I pointed out inside the document that they could do a temporary injunction while they're reviewing this. A permanent injunction requiring Henrico County to cease adding fluoride to its drinking water, and a writ of mandamus requiring Henrico County to cease adding fluoride to the drinking water. The writ of mandamus is actually to require Henrico County to provide pure water under the law. That is really what the writ is. So a writ is to compel the county to obey the law. That's what it is. The injunction is to stop the fluoride. The writ is to compel Henrico to provide pure water under the law. So there's that. All right. Plaintiff's cost in bringing this action, plaintiff's costs in bringing this action and such other and further relief as the court deems appropriate. Yeah, whatever else the court says. Sorry that my voice is a little off. I'm a little bit under the weather. All right, plaintiff is not entitled to any relief because all of her underlying causes of action fail as matter of law. Furthermore, so they think that my causes of actions fail. So let's see what they said. Furthermore, Virginia Code 8.01-189 prohibits issuance of a temporary injunction absent an independent statutory basis for issuance of the same. Okay. 8.01-189 is the code to have the court do an injunction. The court doesn't do an injunction for just anything and everything. Okay, the court does injunctions when there is a controversy. Okay, there's a clear controversy here, and the controversy is that there's no state law that clearly authorizes Henrico to put this chemical drug in the drinking water. Now, what Henrico is saying, let me put this into context with you to give you an analogy. They say prohibits issuance of a temporary injunction absent. So in other words, they're telling the judge, I should not have an injunction absent an independent statutory basis for issuance of the same. Let me see if I can give an analogy. Let's say I'm at the pool and I'm burning up, and I tell my friend, I'm burning up, I'm going to jump in the water to cool me off. And my friend says, no, you can't jump into the water until you can prove that the water cools you off. My response is, I don't know if the water's going to cool me off until I jump into the water, right? That's what's going on here. I'm saying that there's no statutory authority, and the independent statutory basis for the issuance, I need the judge to determine whether or not Henrico County possesses the statutory authority to put this in the drinking water. Whether Henrico County has the legal authority to put this in the drinking water. Even if there is a state law that authorizes Henrico to put this in the drinking water, which there is not. But let's say that 1952 bill actually went through, and it said that localities are authorized to put it into the drinking water. Henrico would still need to pass an ordinance in order to then spend money on the fluoride program. Okay? You can't just put it into the drinking water because you feel like it. There's actual process in which you can do it. And that process has changed because the legal landscape has changed, which is why every single week there's another locality jumping off this fluoride bandwagon. Localities feel like they no longer possess the legal authority to do it. Why don't they possess the legal authority to do it anymore? Because a federal judge has ruled that this poses an unreasonable risk of injury. Because the FDA has put the kibosh to fluoride tablets and fluoride drops. Because the National Toxicology Program had repeatedly said that this is harmful to children. So at this point, it's very difficult to justify compelling the public to ingesting this FDA-defined chemical drug. Okay? All right, let's move on. Plaintiff lacks any such independent statutory basis. I'm asking the judge to do an independent statutory basis, and thus is not entitled to a temporary injunction. For me, this entire thing is one big word salad, but that's just how I feel about it, guys. They're just saying stuff. Furthermore, plaintiff cannot meet the high burden articulated in Virginia Supreme Court R326 and related federal case law pertaining to preliminary injunctions. That's really up to the court to determine, and what I filed was a permanent injunction. I just noted in there that the judge could do a preliminary injunction based upon the information that I provided. See, e.g., the real truth about Obama Incorporated versus Federal Election Commission. I didn't even bother reading this because by the time I got down to this point, I felt like the county was so ridiculous. I did not even review the citation yet. I don't even care at this point. All right, moving on. Plaintiff is not entitled to a permanent injunction because the county's use of fluoride in public drinking water is expressly authorized by statute and related state regulations, and plaintiff has presented no basis for the court to provide any form of injunctive relief. Okay, guys, this is astounding. I am asking Henrico County to provide me the state law that expressly authorizes them to put this FDA-defined drug into the drinking water. Okay, that is the controversy. I'm saying you don't have the law. I'm saying prove it to me. Show me the law. Now, Henrico right here, they're claiming that there is a law that expressly authorizes them to put fluoride in the drinking water, but where's the citation? Again, I'm going to read this. It's astounding. It is absolutely astounding. This is the controversy, folks. Plaintiff is not entitled to a permanent injunction, meaning I am not entitled for the judge to force Henrico to stop putting the chemical drug in the drinking water. Okay, plaintiff is not entitled to the permanent injunction because the county's use of fluoride in public drinking water is expressly authorized by statute. What statute, folks? What statute expressly authorizes the county of Henrico to put fluoride in the drinking water? What is it? I've been asking them for a year and a half. Provide me the statute. I've asked them to provide it in person. I've asked them to provide it by email. I've asked them to provide it when I'm giving speeches. I asked them to provide it in the cease and desist. I'm saying to the judge, it doesn't exist. Now, here, the county's saying, Judge, we pinky promise that there's expressed authorization to put fluoride in the drinking water. We're not going to cite the state law that expressly authorizes us to put the fluoride in the drinking water. We just pinky promise, like, just trust us, Judge. Just trust us. That's what they're saying. And related state regulations. So there's a regulation that expressly authorizes Henrico County to put the FDA-defined chemical drug in the drinking water. What is it? You know that they know how to cite stuff, right? Notice after they put words on a page, here's the citation. They know how to cite Obama. But here is the most important controversy of all, and they're not citing anything. Where's your citation, folks? It's unbelievable. 3 county attorneys put this together, okay? This is a waste of taxpayer funds for them to even write up this nonsense. You don't have the statutory authority. You know it's harmful to children. So just stop. No, they're going to waste your taxpayer money. If you live in Henrico, you should be outraged that the county is spending so much money to fight this. All right, let's move on to C. Mandamus may be used to compel a public official to perform a purely ministerial duty. That is what I'm asking, but may not be used to compel a discretionary act. So at this point, Henrico is claiming that they have the discretion to put the chemical drug in the drinking water, that they get to decide one way or another to put it in the water. What state law gives you the discretion to drug the public? What is it? There needs to be a state law that grants you such discretion without so much as a vote from the public. Now, mandamus may be used to compel a public official to perform a purely ministerial duty. Mandamus is used to compel Henrico to obey the law. That is what I'm asking the judge to do. I'm asking the judge to force Henrico County to obey the law by providing pure water as defined under Virginia Code. Okay? Pure water means that you remove contaminations from the drinking water to make it safe to drink. Okay? That is what our laws say. Nowhere in our pure water laws does it say that you can add a diluted poison to our drinking water. Nowhere. Nowhere in it does it say that you can cause disfigurement in children. Nowhere in it does it say that you can lower the IQ of children. Nowhere in it does it say that you can damage people's thyroids or make your bones more brittle. It just doesn't work that way. Let's move on. Mandamus is not appropriate in this case because the addition of fluoride to drinking water is a discretionary duty. It is not a discretionary duty. You do not. Who has the discretion to put it in the drinking water? Is it the county manager that has the discretion as to whether or not it's in the drinking water? Is it the DPU director, Bentley Chan? Is it him? Does he have the discretion to put it in the drinking water? Is it the waterworks operators that gets the discretion to put it in the drinking water? Is it the board of supervisors? They say my name's Bennett and I ain't in it. There's no meeting minutes where the board ever said, yeah, let's put this in the drinking water. Okay. So the people whose hands are dirty is going to be the county manager, the DPU director, and the waterworks operators. The county manager is at the top of the food chain. So are they asserting that the county manager has the discretion to put it in the drinking water? If so, where's the law that grants him the discretion? Why should one man, they're claiming essentially that one man has the authority to drug 330,000 people, okay? They say mandamus is not appropriate in this case because the addition of fluoride to public drinking water is a discretionary duty. It is not. That is exactly what the problem is. It is not. And they cite C12 VAC. I don't think this is cited. 12 VAC. This isn't exactly how I understand what they're doing here. That's not how I would have cited that. So this right here is the same as 12 VAC 5-590-930. And it says the board, and this is going to be the Virginia Department of Health Board, recommends that all community waterworks in the Commonwealth deliver the optimal fluoride ion concentration as determined by the United States Health and Human Services. They are claiming that Henrico County is claiming that somebody in Henrico, we don't know who, but somebody in Henrico has the discretionary duty to drug you and your family because the VDH board recommends this. And as I've covered in the past, I've spoken to various VDH board members in 2024, 2025, and 2026. I couldn't find anyone who recommends this. You do not have the discretion to drug the public based on a mere recommendation, a recommendation that not a single board member actually recommends, okay? And as we just covered earlier, Health and Human Services does not recommend water fluoridation. Health and Human Services does not have an optimal ion concentration, okay? So all of this is ridiculous, in my opinion. All right, finally, defendant will submit a memorandum in support of this demurrer in advance of the hearing. Right, okay. Henrico County did submit. Will submit a memorandum in support of this demurrer. So they're going to submit a memorandum in support of this demurrer in advance of the hearing, where, for all the foregoing reasons, defendant Henrico County, Virginia, respectfully requests that the court sustain its demurrer and dismiss the action with prejudice. Okay, guys, so that is what they had to say. I will write up a response. I've got a variety of citations that I will be using in order to rebut their ridiculousness. This can all be over if they provide the statutory authority to put drugs in the drinking water. Expressed statutory authority to put drugs in the drinking water. They don't have it, okay? They don't have any documents to support the purpose of drugging the public, to justify drugging the public. They have no documents regarding the safety of this. Nothing. This is ridiculous. Why are they fighting this? Anyway, that is it. I hope that you found this interesting. If you did, make sure to give a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and share it with somebody else. So I will see you next time. Bye, guys.